Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another Sunday recent reads video. And I promise you, after the, you know, grubby misanthropic video I made last Wednesday on the Man Booker International, this one will be very positive because I have 4 books to show you and I like them all. I have a little bit of critique of the first one, but for the rest, it will be a positive video, which is a first for me. And one other thing, if I look at you funny, it's just because I have allergies. So my eyes it's -5 outside, it snows, it's an icy northeastern wind, and I have pollen allergies, of course. But anyway, let's get started with the books. And the first book I want to talk to you about is a book that actually you chose, and that is Barbara Kingsolver's The Lacuna, first published in 2009. You might remember, end of February, I showed you a couple of books, 4, asking you what should I read next. And one of the books I showed you was this one, and thank you all so much for participating and commenting and giving me recommendations and telling me what to read. This one got the most votes, so I started with this one. It was my first Barbara Kingsolver. I already said that when I showed the book in that February video. So I was very curious because I think I needed to read Barbara Kingsolver. This is quite a thick book. It's set between 1935, Mexico, 1949, the United States. The main character, Harrison Shepard, is the son of a Mexican domestic worker and an American father. The mother left the United States going back to Mexico when Harrison was 6 or 7 years old. So in the beginning, we follow him as a young boy and then growing up. He starts to work for the painter Frida Kahlo and her husband Diego Rivera. He then meets in their house Leo Trotsky, who sought refuge there, who got killed there at the end of part 1. So the first part is really about Harrison Shepard as a boy and a young man, and I especially really enjoyed the interplay of him with his mother, the dialogue with his mother, but also his observations and talks with the 2 painters, Frida in particular. Then the second part is quite different. Oh, I have to say, the book is written, quote unquote, by Harrison Shepard's secretary, Violet, whom he will meet in the United States, and it consists mostly of diary entries, notebook entries that Harrison made at the time. Then, like I said, the second part, Harrison goes back to the US. He drives more or less, finds a place to stay by chance, and starts writing fiction books about Mexican history, Cortez, easy fiction, and he's successful. But then he gets into trouble with the McCarthy Committee, the Committee of Un-American Activities, and the second part is partly Violet's observations on that, partly newspaper clippings, notebooks, and then the book ends in 1949 when Harrison Shepard disappears, dies presumably while swimming. This is not a spoiler, you know that right from the start, from the introduction by Violet. I enjoyed the first part much more than the second. That's why I said in the introduction I have a little critique on this one. I thought it was a good book, although what I really thought it was plot-wise didn't really convince me that much. There are a couple of issues with the plot, I thought, but that's very personal. I'm not a big fan of novels consisting of, newspaper clippings, diary entries, that kind of thing. It's just not my thing. So it was a good read, but I thought it was quite slow to get started plot-wise, certainly in the beginning, although the atmosphere was good. And I thought the second part, it was just as if Kingsolver tried to pack too much into the novel. The interrogation, Harrison Shepard's interrogation by the Un-American Committee is good, but it's just too much. I thought she tried too hard to get all these various political issues into the novel, and that didn't work for me as well as I would have expected from a Kingsolver novel. But still, thank you very much for voting on this one. I enjoyed it, and I will certainly read more Kingsolver. If you have recommendations of her work, what I should read next, please let me know down in the comments. Oh, and just to let you know, the next book of the 4 that I showed you in the February video will be Upstairs Wife by Rafia Zakaria. That was second place. So I already started. I will read this as my next pick from you. The next book I want to talk to you about, which I really loved, was A Spur of the Moment buy. I saw it in a bookstore, knew the author, and bought it and loved it. And that book is Jess Kidd, The Hoarder. The book was published in the UK just now in February 2018. I don't think there is a US version out yet, but I'm not sure. I forgot to check. Sorry. If you know Jess Kidd, her debut novel, which was published in 2017 himself, I really loved that, a very quirky story, and this is the same. Quirky is the best word to describe it. It's set in present-day London, and the main character is Maud, a 40-something care worker, and she is sent to clean up the house of the hoarder, Cathal Flood, an elderly man, an ex-artist, antiques dealer, whose wife died a couple of decades ago, and after that he started collecting everything, hoarding. I mean, you know, it's an illness, so collecting is probably not the right word. The house is full of stuff and garbage and hasn't been cleaned in 25 years, and neither has Mr. Flood, by the way. And Maud, who is a very no-nonsense, pragmatic woman with a positive attitude, starts to clean. But spurred by Maud's landlady, who is Renata, a very glamorous transgender woman, they started to talk about Flood's past, and Maud starts to investigate. She finds clues, photographs, maybe Mary, the wife, Flood's wife, who had died falling down the stairs, was murdered, and then there is the daughter who disappeared, and then Maud finds newspaper clippings about another girl who disappeared. So she starts to investigate together with Renata. So it's an amateur detective story in a way. But I said quirky because there are also saints. Maud is accompanied by saints, only she can see. And they are hilarious. They give quite unhelpful, sarcastic advice all the way through. And we also learn that there is an unsolved mystery in Maud's own past, because her sister disappeared when Maud was only 7. So you have this amateur detective story with a gothic twist, and it's just hilarious. Jess Kidd is phenomenal linguistically. She has a way of a quirky, there's the word again, a quirky humor that will just crack you up and make you chuckle. So I love this book. I reviewed it for Open Letters Review. I'm one of the editors. I will leave a link to the website down below, but the review hasn't been posted yet. And I love this book. And I'm not one for magical realism. So if you are into a very strange amateur detective story with sarcastic saints giving advice, this is the book for you. I loved it, like I said, and I can highly recommend it. The third book I read and really loved and want to talk to you about is Edwidge Danticat, Claire of the Sealight, first published in 2013. Now, Edwidge Danticat was born in 1969 in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. So she's an Haitian author living in the United States most of the time. And I read this book for a book club I talked about and raved about earlier, if you're following my channel for any length of time. And that's the Read Around the World book club run by Mel, who has a channel, Mel's Bookland Adventures. I will leave a link to the Goodreads group down below, and we read a novel written by a woman from a different country each month. And in March, we went to Haiti and read Claire of the Sealight. The novel is set in Haiti, in a small village, Ville Rose. And the main character is Claire, a 7-year-old girl, and her father, Nosias. Claire's mother died in childbirth, and Nosias, the novel starts with the first couple of years of Claire's life, and Nosias always wonders whether it wouldn't be better, he's a poor fisherman, whether it wouldn't be better to give Claire away, let her be adopted by a wealthy female shopkeeper who lost her own daughter in an accident. And he contemplates that, and on Claire's 7th birthday, he decides that he will do it, and then at that night, Claire disappears. So that's the premise and the setup of the novel. And then we follow not only Nosias and his past and Claire, but also each chapter focuses on a different person who has some connection to Claire and her father. So we have the shopkeeper, we have the shopkeeper's husband, we have a gang member, we have a radio host, and they all get their own chapter, and we learn something about their lives. And at the end, we go back to Claire when she, is found or not, or I will not spoil you about the end, but then we make a big arc and then go back to Claire. What I really loved about this book were two things. First of all, I thought the writing was beautiful. It was a very quiet and subtle way of atmospheric writing, which draws you in, which gives you a feel for this village, for the people and their different, fates and what happened to them. And the second was that I don't know much about Haiti at all. So you learn something, like I said, because of the atmospheric setting, you learn something about the people and the way they live. So if you are into this kind of, quietly written novel where you have a plot, but a slow plot development, because we look at various characters through the course of the novel, then you will certainly love it as much as I do. I think it was a very moving and also educational story, and the way you learn something about Haiti was just marvelous. And the last book I want to talk to you about is a debut novel, because you might remember, if you're following me, that I want to read at least one debut novel each month. And for March, I picked a thriller, because it's March Mystery Madness after all. And that was Alice Feeney's Sometimes I Lie, published just now in March 2018. Alice Feeney was a reporter for the BBC for a long time before she now published her first book. She lived in London and now lives in the Surrey countryside, as I learned from Goodreads. And Sometimes I Lie is a story, a psychological thriller, a story following Amber Reynolds, who lies in a hospital in a coma after an car accident, we learn. And then you have Paul, her husband, who may or may not have played a role in the accident. You have Amber Reynolds' sister Claire. Amber worked before the accident as a radio host, and her boss Madeline also plays an important role. What makes this book for me, really interesting is that part of it is Amber as a first-person narrator in the coma. She can think and hears things, people visiting, but she can't speak or communicate. This is the part now after the accident. And then the book goes back and forth to just the couple of days, weeks before the accident. We learn something about what happened at the radio with Madeline. We are introduced to Amber's best friend, Joe, who also works at the radio station. And then the third part or portion of the book is diary entries from Amber's childhood. So it's a 3-part novel, interconnecting these parts with twists and turns, because of course we want to know what happened, who did something or not to Amber, and we will learn that towards the end. I thought the pacing for a thriller was tremendous, which is not always the case if a thriller doesn't follow a linear timeline but goes back and forth in time. I often have this feeling then that I want to go on in the now and don't want to be bothered with the past. But Feeney does that so intelligently that you know that you will need those pieces of the past, even from the childhood, in order to understand what happened. So for a debut thriller, I thought it was fantastic. The only flaw that I saw is there's an ex-lover of Amber introduced, Edward, and he seems to be kind of a weird, maybe abusive character, and I thought this character was superfluous. We didn't need it for the story. But other than that, if you're looking for a fast-paced, intelligently written thriller with an unusual setting, as the main person is in a coma, then this will certainly be a book for you. So this was it for my very, very positive Sunday recent reads. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments if you read any of the books that I've talked about, or whether you have any recent reads that you're really positive and enthusiastic about. I would love to know, and I'll see you all soon in my next video. Bye-bye.